So I'm not one of these people that thinks that like every good standalone game needs a sequel. Some things are just meant to be single projects and there's really nothing wrong with that. However, this game needs a goddamn sequel or a remake or something because we're coming on 2 decades since it came out and there's still nothing else like it. Was able to satisfy most of my hand-to-hand combat cravings last year with Sifu, but there's still something about this game that hits differently, man. Mechanically, this might just be the best beat 'em up of all time, which is saying something. Yeah, you see the goddamn title. Today, we're talking about God Hand, the last game developed by Clover Studios and one of the many low-key masterpieces by legendary game director Shinji Mikami. Yeah, apparently right after Resident Evil 4, the same team that worked on that game had the same feeling I had where they were like, damn, there's like no good hand-to-hand combat games anymore, man. Every action game, people have big-ass weapons and shit. Whatever happened to motherfuckers just throwing hands? So they said, hold our beer, we'll make our own, and this game is the result of that. I say that this game's a masterpiece, but this is an opinion I've come around to fairly recently. It seems like for a lot of other people it's the same way. Yeah, when this game came out, nobody was that hot about it, and the reason is because this game is technically pretty fucking bad. Like, it's pretty apparent early on that this game was taken out of the oven way too early. Can easily see someone hating this game as much as they love it, but that's kind of by design as this game was made specifically for hardcore action fans. I'll get into all this later, of course. For now, what the hell is this game even about? What's with our slick-haired protagonist here, and why is he whooping the asses of all these Mad Max rejects?
What the hell?
Huh?
Check your back, smartass.
Son of a bitch!
Damn it, Olivia!
So God Hand sees you playing as Jean, a young fighter who possesses one of the God Hands, legendary arms that grants whoever possesses them the power of a god. With such a powerful object in hand, or I guess in this case limb, you can imagine that there's a lot of people who would want to take it from our main man here. And yeah, that's pretty much why all the fighting in this game happens. There's this elite group of demons called the Four Devas that seek to capture the God Hand, and for most of the game, Jean is just traveling through the land fighting them off. Also, he's accompanied by this woman named Olivia, who's practically his girlfriend. He acts like he hates her and is real tsundere about how he feels about her, but later on, when she gets captured, this motherfucker goes through some shit to get her back. I guess spoilers for that, but let's be real, nobody's playing this game or is gonna play this game for the story. Especially since this game doesn't take itself seriously at all. I mean, how can it with voice acting like this?
Water!
Jean. This place reeks.
I know. Wait, you don't expect me to mop up, do you?
Come on, those guys are cake.
Not to mention, much sexier than you.
Well, your sexy little friends. They're coming for a dance.
They're still sexier than you are.
Not the hammiest voice acting in games, but it's still pretty damn goofy. It's obviously intentional though and matches the tone of the game, which is straight comedy. Yeah, there was definitely a focus on telling some jokes, most of it being of the Japanese variety, so you can expect some off-the-wall shit. Apparently there was an attempt to appeal to Westerners too, but nah, this is some shit that only Japanese people can come up with. Would be lying if I said I laughed at any moments in this game, but I did have a big dumb smile through most of it, especially with the comedic moments that happen in gameplay. The contrast between how over the top the humor is to how this game looks is pretty apparent. Unlike Clover's previous games, for whatever reason they decided for a much more realistic look for this game. In many ways, this game just looks like a mod for Resident Evil 4. Wouldn't put it past them reusing the same assets and engine from that game, except something must have went wrong this time around because unlike Resi, this game is looking pretty dusty these days. Actually, I won't even say these days because even back then, this game wasn't pretty. This goes back to what I said about this game not feeling finished because man, what the fuck even are these levels? There's barely anything here. There's such a lack of detail in these environments at times, it feels like I'm playing a PlayStation 1 game. The camera constantly peering through walls also doesn't help things. Not every level is just lightly detailed walls with some boxes here and there, but man, there was enough to where it was noticeable. I guess there's only so much you can do in a Western setting, but still, the game does switch things up midway with stages 4 and 5 being a mechanical lab and a Mediterranean-style city respectively. There's really no reason why these type of levels are here. It's just the typical, well, the player would be tired of looking at the dry-ass desert, so I guess we should switch it up. I got no problem with it really, I just thought it was worth pointing out. Something that is missing in the later levels is some of the destructible environments. Like in the first couple of levels, you can knock dudes into porches and the whole structure will cave in on them. Thought this would be a staple in many fights moving forward, but nah, all the later stages are wide open spaces for the most part. A little disappointing, but it does make sense since a lot of the later fights are going to need the extra space to reposition and send dudes flying. I mentioned that there's no rhyme or reason for some of the level themes in this game, and that also applies to the music, which is all over the damn place in terms of genres. There's the usual thing of matching the feel of each stage, so you know, the desert stage will have an Egyptian sounding theme and the lab will have an electronic one. You would think for such a badass action game the music would be mega hype and aggressive, but nah, all these tunes in this game are pretty chill and groovy. Apparently that was intentional as the devs wanted relaxing music to contrast how stressful the gameplay is. And you know, it does work for the most part. It helps that these songs in general are pretty catchy. The composer must have been on something while crafting Elvis's theme though. What type of weird ass dance theme? So on the surface, God Hand plays like your standard beat 'em up where you go through a stage whooping the asses of anyone in front of you. You know how beat 'em ups work. You got standard punches and kicks that you can combine for some sick ass combos. Defensively, there's no blocking, but Gene doesn't need that with a weave game like this. The immediate difference between this game and other beat 'em ups is the camera, which is all up in your ass crack. Seems like a weird choice, as with action games you typically want to see everything on screen, but this game decides to go the more immersive route where the view is focused on one guy at a time. Definitely gives this game a unique look and feel with every fight getting a lot of focus, but I'm not gonna lie, I would have preferred the camera being brought back a bit, especially since this game is not afraid of letting multiple guys attack you all at once, and this narrow view is just not built for that. On top of that, they decided to stick with tank controls for whatever reason. Yeah, tank controls in an action game. What type of bullshit? Tank controls in survival horror games already feel like crap. Having to deal with that stiffness in a beat 'em up is just sacrilege. You do have a good amount of defensive options such as weaving, sidestepping, and a backflip to make up for it, but still, the tank controls paired with the camera makes for a pretty clunky feeling game. Honestly, wouldn't blame anyone for it being too awkward to control. However, once you get used to it, like I eventually did, oh man, you're getting into some of the best combat in any game ever. Despite the clunkiness, I've yet to play any other action game that gives you so much control over your character like this game does. This game takes a page out of the WWE games where you can not only build your moveset from scratch, but you can apply them on any of the attack buttons on your controller. And considering that there's 114 moves in total, oh yeah, the amount of different playstyles is insane. Want your Gene to be a straight boxer? You can do that. Want your Gene to have a drunken master style like Jackie Chan? Well, you can do that too. Want Gene to have a smorgasbord of different fighting styles with moves that don't exactly flow into one another? Well, that's also an option. In fact, that's kind of how I built my Gene up at first, just applying moves that I thought would look cool in a combo, until I started to realize that animation speed does matter in this game. Yeah, this is definitely not one of those games where you can get away with just equipping the strongest attacks, and that's because enemies in this game are mad reactive. You throw out too many strikes and they'll start blocking and counterattack. Try to abuse air juggling and these motherfuckers will backflip out of that, becoming even more agitated. Hell, some enemies like this Tiger Joe asshole have the same weave game that you do, which means you gotta be extra on point with how you approach them. All this is amplified with the difficulty level bar here, where the better you do, the higher that shit becomes, which means enemies becoming even more aggressive, purposely surrounding you and using each other for team attacks. Considering the fact that there's mad different enemy types, from dominatrix bitches to sack hitting monks, means there's a lot of different movesets to memorize, and the first run through this game is going to be an embarrassing display of trial and error. Yeah, make no mistake about it, this game is fucking hard. There's some sections in this game that are so overwhelming, I started to wonder if I was even good enough to beat this game. Scrambling around for health items and shit, feel less like the god hand and more like the god pussy. Whoever developed this part in stage 8, like, who hurt you, bro? Tiger Joe along with these strong ass enemies is already insane, but then they throw in this tough demon boss fight for good measure. Oh yeah, I didn't even talk about these assholes. Whenever you beat an enemy, there's a chance for one of these demons to emerge from them. And they are not easy, teleporting all over the place and shit. You do realize that the early variants, you can get away with ducking most of their attacks, but they still do mad damage, and having one randomly pop up in the middle of a fight is mad stressful. Some are scripted, but most of the time it's complete RNG, and I can't really say that I'm a big fan of it. Like, you could be doing so well in a level, and then bam, you run into a demon that just blindsides you. Now, I do realize that this is mostly a skill issue on my part, but still, fuck these assholes. The game would be more enjoyable without them. Despite how cruel this game can be at times, it is pretty lenient when it comes to the item drops. Break some boxes and you will find some health orbs eventually. And gold is fairly easy to come by if you defeat every enemy and don't just run through the stage. Even the checkpoints are generous, but what I don't get is the game not healing you when you clear a stage, but for some reason heals you after dying.
Time for a little fun.
That aside though, the difficulty of the enemies do enhance the game. Even the lowest level goons are stiff challenges, but that just makes overcoming anything in this game feel all the more satisfying. The enemies being able to counter most of your attacks, and then you being able to counter their counter, makes for these epic back and forths. Often feels like I'm fighting a player in a fighting game than I am an AI in a beat 'em up. Wouldn't be surprised if that was intentional, as launches, guard breaks, and lows are all different attack types from fighting games that are present in this game. And just like fighting games, carefully reading your opponent and responding with the right type of attack is how you succeed. You're rewarded for all this too, as the more consistently you lay the whoop ass gets enemies in a dazed state, which allows you to lay the real beat down with these context sensitive button presses. Shit, what's overcoming a challenge if you don't feel like a badass while doing it? They don't call you the god hand for nothing. All your moves feel fast, weighty, and strong, and the visuals of hitting dudes across an arena never gets old.
My defenses are impregnable!
Outside of your standard moves, you got these special god reel attacks that cost one of these orbs, and these moves are already cherries on top of an already stylish combat system. Kicking people into outer space and shit, doing home runs, fighting a little dirty. These moves are definitely not created equal though. If you save enough money to get the later ones, they just delete bosses. And of course it wouldn't be a high octane action game if there wasn't an button to power up and bust you out of tight situations. In this game, it's simply the God Hand itself, and when activated, it speeds up all of Gene's attacks and makes him invincible until his tension bar runs out. One of the few techniques in this game where you can actually turn your brain off and go buck wild. Definitely the thing to shoot for in some of the later sections, especially with the boss battles, since the primary way you build it up is being in the fray. So many systems and they all come together seamlessly. There's just so many ways you can approach the combat, man, and this is one of those games where every time I play through it, I keep finding new exploits. Combine that with the wacky animations and some incentives to get better, and you got one hell of a combat system, man. Till this day, I don't think any other game aside from maybe Sifu has come close to touching this game in terms of hand-to-hand combat. These feelings are exacerbated whenever I fight Azel, who's low-key one of the best boss fights of all time. This motherfucker has a god hand too, which means he could do practically everything Gene can, and man, he is not afraid to show it. Throughout the fight, I had to self-reflect a bit like,
ow! That hurts! My God, is that what I've been doing to people?
Power, speed, vicious weave game and all. If you don't come correct against this dude, he'll hand you a death faster than a YouTuber does a fake apology. And it's also why he's such a good boss fight. Puts to test all your skills learned throughout the game, and going back and forth with him looks like something straight out of an anime fight scene. It also helps that his music sounds like it belongs in Mega Man X. The other bosses are standard character action stuff, big monstrosities that hit hard and take a minute to whittle down. Not really much to say about them except that sometimes it feels really awkward to predict their attacks, as a lot of them are big screen gobblers. Hard to learn, hard to master, but once you start to get good, it starts to feel good. One thing I will say though is that this game could do a better job at teaching players about some vital moves. Like Jean will always have this Shoryuken and roundhouse kick that are great for air juggling and launching regular enemies that the game never tells you about. I understand that experimenting is key, but still, like, these are like moves that are already embedded in Jean's toolkit that you'll always have, so like, you could at least like remind players about it. Unfortunately, all the praise I give to the combat, I cannot give to the level design. I already went over how ugly these stages look, but the way they're paced is just really weird. So you got these 8 stages, right? And within these stages are many bite-sized levels. And when I say bite-sized, I mean it, as most of the time, the objectives in them amount to just unlocking a gate or a door or something. Hell, there's literally levels that are just a straight path to a door, and that's it. It makes me wonder if these 8 stages were supposed to be big fat levels with save points rather than broken up into small pieces like this. It's just really jarring when all you do is fight like 2 groups of enemies, walk through a door, and then the game takes you back to the hub menu. I feel like this game wouldn't feel as repetitive if all these small levels were just tied together, because it's not like there's no good obstacles in this game outside the fighting, they're just few and far between. Still, this game got it right focusing on the fighting mechanics, since that is the main appeal here. It didn't work! So this is usually the part of the video where I talk about the story and things related to it, but there's barely a narrative in this game. Most of the cutscenes are either Jean and Olivia dicking around in this hotel room, or the 4 Devas dicking around this round table. Most of the conversations of the latter just amount to, we should stop the God Hand, and then one of these assholes leave only to get their ass kicked by Jean. It's pure Saturday morning cartoon mustache twirling villain stuff, but obviously the whole tone of this game fits that. With the former, I swear a lot of these scenes are just a way to show off Olivia, who the devs clearly have a hard-on for. Seriously, with a lot of these shots, you can practically hear the developers begging you to dress her in the bunny outfit. Typical Capcom perviness aside, there are some stakes involved with these guys trying to resurrect this demon god named Angra, but it barely matters as it's mentioned once in like a throwaway line. Not really sure how I feel about Jean as a character. He walks that weird line of being both cool and lame, kind of like Travis Touchdown, except he's not an otaku. He throws out quippy comebacks and one-liners, but because the voice acting is so bad, it sounds like he's trying way too hard.
What's the matter? You on a tight budget, big guy?
You know what? I'm getting a bit hungry, and a little huevon sounds like it would hit the spot.
You need to feed your brain, not your ass.
I hope you fight half as good as you talk, cabron.
Find out for yourself.
Yeah! I don't think you realize what you're getting yourself into, pendejo!
Newsflash, big guy. You can wax on, wax off all you like. I'm still kicking your ass.
So yeah, that's God Hand. What a wacky game. A flawed masterpiece if there ever was one. Shoddily made in many areas, but still worth playing in the modern day since there's really nothing else like it. Once you get the mechanics down, man, there's few other action games that get you hooked in the same way. Unfortunately, this is one of many neglected IPs in Capcom's library. We're long overdue for a remaster, a remake, or a spiritual successor of some kind. Shit, Capcom, the least you could do is port this game over to modern consoles. I still have my copy on the PlayStation 3, so I didn't have to emulate it this time, but not everyone keeps old ass hardware around like me. Anyway, that's all I gotta say about this one. If you like this video, I got plenty of more like it on the channel. Help this video out in the algorithm by doing the usual stuff, and until next time.